Please stand. Please be seated.
Morning, everyone. I always love that, going down and seeing the little ones down there. Whenever you say good morning, there's this beautiful choral response with your name. And anyway, it's just I'm not used to it, but it's kind of fun. So I'm actually going to start off with a poem, and then we're gonna do some singing. We're going to hear from some what I'm sure will be some really interesting, fascinating history about certain parts of the school. So really looking forward to that today. This is a poem that I've always liked since the first time I read it. It reminds me of the importance of being present. And I know physically at this time it's not always easy or possible to be present with the various protocols and things like that. But certainly when you're in your various environments, at QMS, at home, wherever it is, again, it's just that reminder of being present. It's a poem by Tom Wayman. Did I miss anything? Nothing. When we realized you weren't here, we sat with our hands folded on our desks in silence for the 2 full hours. Everything. I gave an exam worth 40% of the grade for this term and assigned some reading due today, on which I'm about to hand out a quiz worth 50%. Nothing. None of the content of this course has value or meaning. Take as many days off as you like. Any activities we undertake as a class, I assure you, will not matter either to you or me and are without purpose. Everything. A few minutes after we began last time, a shaft of light suddenly descended and an angel or other heavenly being appeared and revealed to us what each woman or man must do to attain divine wisdom in this life and the hereafter. This is the last time the class will meet before we disperse to bring the good news to all people on earth. Nothing. When you are not present, how could something significant occur? Everything. Contained in this classroom is a microcosm of human experience, assembled for you to query and examine and ponder. This is not the only place such an opportunity has been gathered, but it was one place, and you weren't here. We're going to sing a hymn called I Vow to Thee, My Country, which you've sung before. And we selected it today in part because we did it on Tuesday, but also in preparation for our Remembrance services that we're going to have next week. Okay, so many of you are aware and have been involved in those sorts of services in previous years. I'm sure almost all of you have. And the lyrics tie in, I think, quite nicely with many of the themes and some of those things that you're going to hear next week too. Okay, so please stand. The lyrics will be on behind me. I vow to thee, my country. Please be seated. And I'd like to invite Mr. Mara Armstrong and Tegan Cropp forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Monroe. So, Tegan and I have been engaged since the beginning of this school year in studies about our school history, and we wanted to share some of those connections that you may not even realize every day you're encountering on your day-to-day basis. So we're going to share some of that history with you. And above, you'll see pictures. I've tried to time them, but that's Miss Denny and Miss Geoghegan, and you're going to see pictures of the school over the years, but also some individuals connected to the school. So each week we come to chapel to reflect, celebrate accomplishments, and come together as a community. Rarely do we think about the origins of our chapel, the hard work and determination that was required to establish our school, build our gathering place, or of the many connections our school has to nearly 100 years of history. Our school is rich with experiential opportunities to learn about what it was like at a particular time and place. Starting here with the original school and the first class of 1921. So you can see there's been a tremendous amount of growth over the past 100 years. Later, in 1933, with $36 in hand, Miss Denny and Miss Geoghegan began the task of building a chapel from the ground up. Students helped to clear the land during break and dinner, helped to raise money by cleaning windows, weeding, hosting plays, and running games at the bazaar. In the history of the building of the chapel, it is noted that in work for God, there are commonly 3 stages. First, impossible, then difficult, then done. This may sound like a motto for 2020, an admittedly challenging and difficult year for everyone. However, I wonder, how would Miss Denny and Miss Geoghegan approach this challenge? How would these 2 intrepid women who cleared the land for the chapel, took down a barn, built and established a school, dug a swimming pool twice, served in World War I, survived the Great Depression and World War II, how would they face the challenge of 2020? The chapel itself is only one of the many legacies that exemplifies our motto, Servite Fortiter, or Serve Ye Bravely. As noted in Beyond All Dreams, it is not easy for the young people of today in this rich and beautiful country to understand the privation and hunger, the horrors of war, and lack of security. Yet, it would behoove us not to try to understand, to empathize with the past in an effort to understand the sacrifices that were made to afford us the present and the future we see before us. It is here where past with present joins the future, where true links of QMS remain. Did you know before World War I, Miss Denny was a devoted Girl Guide and Boy Scout leader? One of the first lady Scoutmasters. In fact, on August 4th, 1914, Miss Denny was with a scout troop out on a camping trip on the coast the day the war broke out. They spent the remainder of their trip patrolling the shore to protect the public. Many of her scouts ended up later serving in active service. This is true about many QMS students, including Charles Ferguson Hoey, a recipient of the most prestigious wartime honor of the Victoria Cross. In fact, Miss Denny herself headed to England in 1914 to help serve with the Volunteer Aid Detachment and later Queen Alexandra's Imperial Military Nursing Service. She served in England and France and was there when the armistice to end the war was signed in 1918. After 4 years at war, what advice do you think Miss Denny might offer you about the challenges of 2020? There are many other connections to challenging times in history that remind us daily of the sacrifices of those before us, not only in serving the school through endeavors like building the chapel, but in service to our country during wartime as well.
Did you know that inside and outside the chapel there are many rich and mysterious connections to wartime? Our stained glass window depicting our school crest in this very chapel holds a wartime secret. If you look really carefully, there is a smaller piece of a medieval glass in it, with a beautiful crowned head, and in the middle, and it's broken ever so slightly. It was a gift suggested by the head girl, Doris, in 1934. From her father, who picked it up in the ruins of Arras Cathedral while he was serving in World War I. It was later incorporated into the window for the chapel. So if you get a chance, just come up and look at it. It's just a tiny piece of history right there. And as you're walking into the chapel, has anyone noticed the bell outside? Yeah? Anyone been brave enough to ring it? Yeah? Well, I did. And then I ran away because I was scared I was going to get in trouble. The bell was taken from Her Majesty's ship RMS Cruel, in a light cruiser that sailed in the Navy at the Battle of Jutland in World War I. It was commanded in China between 1927 and 1928 by Miss Denny's cousin, Commander Allen. It was even marooned 800 miles up the Yangtze River in China for 8 months. It's an interesting symbol of our global connections, so if you haven't noticed it, look for it on your way out of the chapel. Did anyone know that there's a bomb shelter on campus? Yeah? In World War II, Miss Denny and Miss Geoghegan were concerned about the possibility of an attack on the Pacific coast, and they had many children on campus that it was their responsibility to take care of because their parents were so far away overseas, not unlike our borders today. In case of an attack, the local authorities to whom they wrote to advice told them, "Scatter the children in the woods." Thinking this was not the best idea, Miss Denny and Miss Geoghegan set about to build an air raid shelter themselves. Every member of the school community helped to excavate the hill behind the TLC with garden spades, coal shovels, towels, forks, and wheelbarrows. Can you imagine that? Like digging a shelter with a towel? They only hired someone to reinforce it with iron bars, and they were the last ones they could find at the time, which is not unlike the plexiglass shortage of 2020. It is worth noting that it has never been used for any wartime purposes, but instead as a pool changing space and extra storage. So if you ever, on the side of our senior school, you can look behind, and it looks like it has like picket fence kind of thing you would have around a garden on it. That's our bomb shelter. And did you also know our swimming pool played a role in World War II? In 1930, the students of Queen Margaret School began to dig a hole for the swimming pool, likely with the same spades and towels they used nearly a decade later for the bomb shelter. The students were so industrious that they ended up digging it twice after reconsidering the position of the pool. During the war, however, the school was notified that the pool could be seen from the air and needed to be camouflaged. The end result was an art project of painted rocks, fish, logs, and seaweed, and even a wrecked ship. Can you picture that? Perhaps we could bring that back. Maybe. As we approach Remembrance Day on the 11th day of the 11th month of the 11th hour, we are called to duty to commemorate and remember the immeasurable suffering and sacrifices of our soldiers and citizens. This includes remembering our connections to wartime and our founders, Miss Denny and Miss Geoghegan, whose internal optimism and hard work and dedication to QMS have provided a place of peace and security to children to learn and thrive for nearly 100 years. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tegan and Miss Omar Armstrong. Fascinating historical notes there, and I really am just sort of in awe of the amount of commitment to something that Miss Denny and Miss Geoghegan believed in, and to what they felt was their purpose. I know many of you will be at that stage where you're starting to find your own causes that you really believe strongly in, and you're trying to find your purpose as well in life too. So. Good luck with that, and remember that those 3 steps which rang through, and I wrote them down, which was this idea of something being impossible, and then difficult, and then done, and how true is that of many things in our lives. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone for your help with lunch duty. Okay, I know we've been trialing this new sort of cyclical approach to tables coming in and helping out before lunch. It's making a massive difference. Okay, and in talking to the kitchen staff and in being there to see you in action as well, just wanted to say a big thank you for helping out. I think we're nearly through our sort of first cycle of that. Next week, as I said, will be the Remembrance services. So this group will be in here on Thursday morning for Remembrance Day service. It went out in the announcements, but just a reminder, next week you won't have to wear centennials on Monday, okay, grades 10s to 12s. You'll have a couple of back-to-back day centennials, but we just felt that given the service and the significance of the service, that it's right that we should be here in centennials on Thursday in chapel together. So 10s to 12s, we'll do centennials on Thursday and Friday next week, okay? And we're going to join together in a final hymn before Mr. Robertson comes up and says some closing words. And then again, just a reminder, as I said at the start, that sort of collective notion of just standing at the end and at the starts, just to sort of symbolise that the shared experience of chapel is either starting or has come to an end. So let's do that as well, please. This next hymn is called Immortal Invisible. Please stand.
Not much to add, actually. Just a couple of reflections from me. I think that was really valid this morning, so thanks, Mr. Armstrong, too, and Tegan, that was excellent. I think that's it's so important to, I always say, if you want to know where you're going, look where you came from. So knowing where you've come from is a big part of figuring out where you're going. Every generation tries to inspire, I would like to think, future generations. And so Miss Denny and Miss Geoghegan spent an awful lot of time trying to leave a legacy that was unknown, right? They didn't know whether this school would survive after their passing or what it would become. And it's wonderful to think of that what it has become, and that we are all here courtesy of their persistence. Perspective, as you know, is a hugely important thing in life. Whose perspective, keeping things in perspective, and all of that. And if you think of that, as I was listening there, in the first 25 years, so here we are, Vancouver Island in 1920-21, it's a different place from Vancouver Island today. You came over the Malahat from Victoria on a car track. You didn't have the Trans-Canada Highway. And so it's a vastly different place in terms of the challenges and the amenities available to you. But you decide that you're going to carve a school out of mixture of forest and a former quarry. And in the first 25 years, you faced the Great Depression, which, if we think COVID was bad, the Great Depression was 10 times worse. And then, not long after that, you have a world war, a real world war, where virtually everybody was involved. So in the first 25 years, those challenges, as you're trying to start a school, are thrown at you. So when I think about our job of getting the school through COVID, I think, yeah, when you're feeling that life is a bit tough, it's all about perspective. So next week, very important week for us, because people made huge sacrifices, not just our founders, but lots of people, so that we can enjoy the freedoms that we enjoy today as a society. So it is important to recognize that and acknowledge it. That's it. Thanks everybody today. Thank you. Thank you.